I never thought much about ghosts. That changed last year when I moved into a small rental house on the outskirts of town. It was cheap, secluded, and perfect for someone like me who worked night shifts and needed quiet during the day. The landlord mentioned that the previous tenant left suddenly, but I didn't care. I just wanted a place to sleep. The first few nights were uneventful. Then, things got strange. It started with the window in my bedroom. Every morning when I got home from work, I would close the curtains before collapsing into bed. But by the time I woke up in the evening, the curtains would be open. At first, I blamed myself. Maybe I forgot. Maybe the wind did it. But I started taking pictures before sleeping, just to be sure. The curtains were always drawn in the pictures, but open when I woke up. One night I set up my phone to record. When I checked the footage the next day, my stomach dropped. Around 3 a.m., the curtains moved, slowly, like someone was parting them with their fingers. But no one was there. Then I saw it. A shadow, tall and thin, standing just outside the window. It didn't move. It didn't shift. It was just there, watching. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe a tree outside. Maybe a trick of the light. But I knew there were no trees close to the house. And that shape, it looked like a person. Things escalated. I started hearing whispers at night. Not words, just faint murmuring that sent shivers down my spine. I'd wake up gasping for air, feeling like someone was watching me. The air in my room always felt heavy, thick with something I couldn't explain. One night I woke up with the feeling of someone standing over me. My breath hitched as I turned my head, expecting to see something. The room was empty, but my window was wide open. I had locked it before bed. I stopped sleeping in my bedroom after that. I moved to the living room thinking maybe I was just imagining things. But the presence followed me. One night as I lay on the couch, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Slow, deliberate steps, like someone was walking barefoot. I held my breath. The steps stopped right behind the couch. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. After what felt like hours, the presence faded, but I still didn't move until the sun came up. The final straw came a few days later. I was in the shower trying to shake off the exhaustion from another sleepless night. When I stepped out, I froze. Written on the fogged-up mirror in long, dripping streaks were the words, "Let me in." I left that day. I packed a bag and never went back. A few months later, curiosity got the better of me. I looked up the history of the house. Turns out the previous tenant, a young man like me, had disappeared. His car, wallet, and phone were still in the house, but he was gone. The last thing he told his neighbor, "I think something's watching me at night." After I left that house, I thought it was over. I moved in with my brother across town, hoping distance would put it all behind me. But the thing about fear, real fear, is that it doesn't let go so easily. At first, it was just the dreams. I'd see the house in my sleep, dark and silent, with that window always open. Sometimes, I'd see the shadow standing outside, staring up at me. Other nights, it was inside the house, waiting at the end of the hallway. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, heart pounding, convinced that if I turned my head, it would be standing there. Then the whispers started again. My brother's house was modern, well-lit, and busy, the complete opposite of my old place. But late at night, when everyone was asleep, I'd hear them. Soft, hissing murmurs coming from the vents, the corners of my room, and worst of all, the closet. I'd lie there frozen, straining to hear the words. but it was always just out of reach. One night I finally gathered the courage to check the closet. I flung the door open, expecting something, but there was nothing, just my clothes and some boxes. Still, the air inside was cold and it smelled like damp earth. That's when I knew it had followed me. The next day, I called the landlord of the old house. I needed answers. He was reluctant at first, but after some pushing, he finally told me what happened to the tenant before me. His name was Eric. He'd lived there for 6 months before he vanished. No signs of struggle, no packed bags, just gone. The police were baffled, but then the landlord dropped a bombshell. Before Eric, there was another tenant, and before that, another. Every single one of them reported strange occurrences, voices, moving objects, and the same thing I saw, the shadow, and each one left suddenly or disappeared. I knew I had to go back. It was the worst decision of my life. I drove out to the house at dusk, the sky bleeding red and orange. The place looked the same, small, isolated, and wrong. My stomach twisted as I walked up the path. The air felt heavier, like the house was holding its breath. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The smell hit me immediately. That same damp, earthy scent from my brother's closet. The house was cold and silent, but I could feel it watching me. I didn't turn the lights on. I didn't want to see too clearly. I went straight to the bedroom. The window was closed, but the curtains were open. Outside, the yard was empty, no shadow. I took a deep breath and started talking. I know you're here. I know what you've done. My voice shook, but I kept going. What do you want? The room stayed silent. I waited, listening, and then I heard it. A faint scraping sound from the closet. I turned slowly. The door was cracked open, and something moved inside. The whispering started again, louder now, more frantic. I took a step forward, and the door burst open. A figure lunged out, not quite human, not quite shadow. Its limbs were long and thin, its face pale and stretched like wax. Black, empty eyes locked onto mine as it stumbled toward me. I ran. I tore through the house, slamming the front door behind me. But as I reached my car, I looked back and saw it standing in the window, its hand pressed against the glass. But the worst part, it was smiling. I never went back, but even now I still see it. In reflections, in dark corners in my dreams. It followed me, and I know one day, it won't just watch. It'll come inside. I thought leaving that house again would end it. I was wrong. The thing followed me. I'm sure of it now. At first, it stayed in the edges of my vision, a dark shape slipping behind trees, standing at the far end of hallways. I'd blink, and it would be gone, but it didn't stay subtle for long. One night I was staying late at work. The office was empty, the only sound the soft hum of my computer. I was focused on my screen when I felt it, that horrible weight, like someone standing just behind me. My skin crawled. I turned slowly, and there it was, reflected in the dark window. The shadow stood behind my chair, thin and still, but this time, it was closer than ever before. I spun around, nothing there. But when I turned back to the window, it was smiling. After that, the whispers got louder. I'd wake up in the middle of the night to the sound of my name being hissed from the closet or the vent. My phone would ring with no caller ID, and when I answered, there was only ragged breathing. One night I woke up to the sound of my bedroom door creaking open. I stayed perfectly still, barely breathing. Slow, shuffling footsteps crossed the room, stopping at the foot of my bed. My blanket started to pull down, inch by inch. I couldn't take it anymore. I called my brother and begged him to let me stay at his place again. He agreed, but I wish he hadn't. The first night there, things got worse. We were watching TV when his dog started growling at the hallway, low and menacing. Then we heard the footsteps, heavy, dragging steps moving toward us. My brother called out, but there was no answer. The footsteps kept coming. He grabbed a bat and went to check, but the hallway was empty. The dog wouldn't stop growling, and I knew it was here. That night I slept in the guest room, or tried to. I woke up around 3 a.m. feeling that familiar weight in the air. I opened my eyes, and it was standing at the foot of the bed. It was closer than ever. I could see its face, pale and stretched, its mouth twisted into a grin. It whispered my name in a voice that sounded like dead leaves scraping the ground. Then it started crawling onto the bed. I bolted out of the room, slamming the door behind me. My brother found me shaking in the living room. I told him everything, and he believed me until we heard the scratching. Long, slow scratches on the other side of the guest room door. We left the house that night and went to a hotel. But I know it's not over. Wherever I go, it follows. It's getting closer. And one night I know it's going to catch me.